Welcome to the second edition of Tea with Phumi. I am your host, Phumelele Makhathini. Today we are talking about the so controversial, highly topical COVID-19 vaccination. With us to share his insights and expert knowledge is epidemiologist and vaccinologist Professor Charles Waisonge, who is joining us from Cape Town for a virtual cup of tea. Thank you and welcome, Professor Waisonge. It is a great pleasure to have you on the second edition of Tea with Phumi. Thank you for your invaluable time.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me for the coffee.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Prof, to get started, there's been a lot of myths pertaining to COVID-19 vaccination, and you have a keen interest in vaccination hesitancy as a whole. But I think that there's more hesitancy on COVID-19 vaccine in particular. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of myth pertaining to what COVID-19 vaccine is all about. So what are the current barriers to COVID-19 vaccination in Southern Africa?
Thank you so much for having me, Phumi, for this tea. So with the COVID-19 vaccination, more generally since last year, we have heard more in the public domain about vaccination than any time in history. And the barriers to COVID-19 vaccination uptake, there are quite a range. It ranges from supply, availability, and access to the psychosocial factors that may facilitate or inhibit the uptake of vaccination. So it's quite a wide range, and even within one country, we might find out that there might be more of one challenge in one part of the country than the other. And even it can also be at one point, there might be problem of access, problem of availability, and another time, when the access is already there might then be problems of psychosocial factors and people's attitudes towards this vaccine. So it's a wide range.
So South Africa has a long way to go because it's not just a South African issue, it is an African issue as a whole.
Yeah, so, we do have a long way to go, but we also need to celebrate what we've been able to do. At the beginning, we have quite a problem with access, with supply, and with availability. And I think we now have quite a steady supply. We have vaccines available, and more vaccination sites have been opened. And really, the problem now needs to be the community, the people, or the adults 18 years and above who need to come for the vaccination.
What are the possible solutions? I know you've touched on some, but what are the pertinent and most immediate solutions to these barriers?
To each barrier, there might be a solution. There's no one size fits all. When we had problems of supply availability, I think at that point it was up to our government to negotiate and sign contracts, either bilateral or as part of multilateral agencies, either the African Union or through the COVAX facility to have the vaccines. Now we have them. Then issues of access. There are some places where people might have to travel very long distances to come to vaccination sites. So we need to bring vaccination closer to the people. So having many vaccination sites, having them close to where people are, and it's close might not only be in terms of physically, but also if people are like busy taximen, we could also bring the vaccination sites close to where the taxi ranks, or if people are old people from rural areas who are coming for their monthly social grants, we could have them on grand kiosks, vaccinations around there, opening up more vaccination sites, having them. And I think the government is doing quite a lot of that. And also the private sector. And I think we need to appreciate that. But then we need to do more. We need to there are still people who travel very long distances in rural areas to come to vaccination sites. And I think we need to open more vaccination sites. Even busy people who are very busy during the week, we need to have vaccinations during weekends so that they can go there. We also need to have very convenient vaccination times, even during the day. Why not have them extended hours in the evenings so that people who are busy during the day, they can go and have the vaccinations at that time? Why not bring the vaccinations to taxi ranks where there are all these very busy people who can then also go there and have the vaccination? Why not have them even in trains or even in long distance buses where people can give those vaccinations while people. So there are various innovative ways that we can actually make and ensure that vaccination comes close to the people. And once it is there, of course, then people, of course, need to accept voluntarily to take this vaccination. So we're talking here about issues around attitudes, behavioral, and social drivers of vaccination. We need to be able to give the right information. We know that there has been a lot of misinformation. You've mentioned the myths around vaccination, and people actually they keep changing the goalposts. When they come up with one thing and you clarify that, then they bring another one. So
Correct.
when we of course need to understand this, we need to listen very carefully, empathically to what the concerns are, and then of course provide adequate responses, adequate solutions to that, provide the right information. And I'm sure if we do that, the majority of people will accept the vaccines.
I agree fully, and I think the solutions you've mentioned are very practical solutions, and they can be implemented almost immediately. So thank you for that. What are the repercussions of failing to adhere to vaccinations? I mean, right now we're sitting at about 16% of the total population that's currently vaccinated in South Africa. What would happen if we fail to overcome these barriers?
Well, what will fail is, when with vaccinations, if of course there is, we protect somebody at the individual level. When you take, you are protected. But also, if we have sufficient numbers of people who are vaccinated, then we can also then stop the transmission of the infection within the communities. And this is what we often refer to as herd immunity. And for that, we really need to have very high coverage. At first, we used to talk about 67%, but of course, knowing that not everybody in the country is eligible for vaccination. So we really, for the adults, we need to have very, very high coverage, maybe 90%, maybe 95%. And in that way, we'll be able to stop the transmission, reduce the transmission. There would be protection at the individual level, then also at the community level, because there's less transmission of the disease, so it would help. So we really need to, for us to really have an impact, to protect both the individual and the community, we really need to ensure that we have very, very high vaccination coverage.
Absolutely. Thank you for that informative discussion. And hopefully, we can continue educating the public about the importance of getting vaccinated. And we will hopefully invite you again to have further discussions on COVID-19 vaccine. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Phumi, and thank you for having me. I do appreciate, and we need to have opportunities like this to be able to pass out the right information. I know your audience, I know people working with you, people in your company, and people who might have access to this online. They will need the right information, and we all need to play our part to get the right information out there to make sure that people are literate about what vaccines are, why it is important to take the vaccines, and I appreciate your efforts so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and it's a great pleasure to have you with us. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you so much.
Well, we all know what we need to do. The message is simple: get vaccinated. I cannot stress that enough. Be one of the many millions of people around the world who have successfully been vaccinated against COVID-19. Thanks for watching. Until next time.